Have you ever wondered how a chess-obsessed kid born in Germany became one of Silicon Valley's most controversial power players? What drives someone to not just build a business, but to try to reshape politics, data, even the destiny of humanity? Today, we're diving into the life, ideas, and legacy of Peter Thiel, born October 11, 1967, a man who's more than just a billionaire, but a provocateur, investor, and thinker whose influence echoes far beyond tech. Peter Andreas Thiel was born on October 11, 1967, in Frankfurt, West Germany. When he was about 1 year old, his family immigrated to the United States. They later spent some years in Africa before returning to the U.S. in the mid-1970s. Growing up, Thiel developed an early interest in strategy and logical puzzles. He became a skilled chess player, gaining recognition in youth chess circuits. He studied at Stanford University, earning a BA in philosophy in 1989. Afterward, he attended Stanford Law School, receiving his JD in 1992. While at Stanford, he co-founded the student newspaper, the Stanford Review, which took strong stands against political correctness and became an early platform for his contrarian ideas. He also published The Diversity Myth soon after graduation, critiquing campus ideology and institutional culture. These early years shaped his intellectual style, skeptical of consensus, drawn toward critique, and unafraid to challenge norms. After law school, Thiel held several roles. He clerked for a federal judge, worked as a securities lawyer, and served as a speechwriter. He also briefly traded derivatives at Credit Suisse. But the turning point came in 1998, when he and colleagues Max Lebchin and Luke Nosek co-founded Confinity, a startup focused on payments. Confinity later merged with Elon Musk's X.com, eventually evolving into PayPal. Thiel became CEO and chairman of PayPal, steering its growth. In 2002, eBay acquired PayPal for about $1.5 billion, a major win for Thiel and his colleagues. This event also marked the emergence of the so-called PayPal Mafia, a network of former PayPal founders and employees who went on to found or invest in many of Silicon Valley's biggest names. Once PayPal was sold, Thiel shifted from operator to investor and thought leader. He launched Clarion Capital, a global macro hedge fund. He also, in 2004, co-founded Palantir Technologies, a data analytics company whose software helps government agencies, intelligence, and private firms analyze large volumes of data. Palantir's ties to government and surveillance have been controversial, especially given Thiel's libertarian leanings. In 2004, Thiel also made an early significant bet on Facebook, becoming its first outside investor, investing $500,000. He later served on the board for many years. Over time, he sold much of his stake and eventually left the board. Thiel also co-founded Founders Fund, a venture capital firm, with partners including Ken Howry and Luke Nosek, aiming to back ambitious, disruptive startups. He later co-founded Mithril Capital and maintained roles in multiple funds. Philosophically, Thiel is known as a contrarian thinker. He often argues that great entrepreneurs do what others aren't doing, seeing opportunities where consensus sees risk. He's critiqued the notion that technology's trajectory is smooth or inevitable, arguing instead for bold bets in underexplored frontiers. Thiel's life hasn't been without controversy. In 2007, Gawker published a post titled, "Peter Thiel is totally gay, people." Although many already knew of his sexual orientation, Thiel saw it as a public outing and later secretly financed litigation against Gawker that culminated in a huge judgment and Gawker's bankruptcy. He's also been vocal in political circles, donating to conservative and Republican candidates and participating in Donald Trump's 2016 transition team. His views on democracy, globalism, and governance have been scrutinized. For example, he has questioned whether freedom and democracy remain compatible in the modern world. More recently, Thiel has embarked on a controversial lecture series about the Antichrist and apocalyptic themes, bringing theological ideas into his public persona and provoking debate. Moreover, he founded a secretive network called Dialogue, hosting off-the-record meetings among elites across business, tech, and policy. Thiel's philanthropic efforts are deeply aligned with his worldview. He founded the Thiel Foundation in 2005, which supports projects in science, technology, and innovation. A flagship initiative is the Thiel Fellowship, which is originally known as 20 Under 20. This fellowship gives $100,000 over 2 years to promising young people to skip or leave college and build ventures instead. He's funded anti-aging research, for example via the Methuselah Foundation and SENS, with the belief that biological aging is a solvable problem. He also pledged money to the Seasteading Institute, backing the idea of floating autonomous communities beyond typical state control. These projects reflect his ambition not just to invest in firms, but to imagine alternative futures in governance, lifespan, and society. Peter Thiel is one of those figures whose legacy is still unfolding. On one hand, he's backed or founded transformative tech platforms, influenced the shape of venture capital, and challenged orthodoxies in both business and politics. On the other hand, critics argue that his ideological stances, his skepticism of democracy, embrace of elite networks, and involvement in surveillance technology raise questions about power, accountability, and inequality. His role in the Gawker litigation particularly triggered debate over the intersection of free speech, press, and the influence of wealth. His support for right-wing political projects has also made him a lightning rod in the culture wars. In tech circles, he remains admired by many for his willingness to think big, to take bets others deem too risky, and to push against incrementalism. Yet his critics warn that some of his bets, especially those with political or surveillance implications, deserve closer scrutiny. Peter Thiel's story reminds us that influence isn't just about wealth, but ideas, networks, and courage to challenge consensus. Whether you view him as visionary or controversial or even both, his path prompts deep questions. Where should technology lead us? Who gets to steer society? And how do we balance innovation with ethics? Thanks for joining me. If you like this episode, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more stories at the intersection of power and ideas.